video for how to do the toe of the spider because it uses short rows, which can be a little bit tricky. So what you're going to do is with short row 1, single crochet in the first stitch, slip stitch into the next stitch, and that's the entire short row. So you're going to chain 1, short row 2, turn, skip that slip stitch that was just made, and single crochet in the next 6 stitches. Alright, slip stitch into the next stitch, chain 1, and turn. This is short row 3, skip that first slip stitch, single crochet in the next 6 stitches. You're going to single crochet in that chain 1 space, that was a chain 1 turning chain. Single crochet into the next stitch, which is from round 7. Slip stitch into the next stitch, chain 1 and turn. So again, you're going to skip that slip stitch and single crochet in the next 8 stitches. Okay, I've completed the 8 stitches. I'm going to single crochet into that chain 1 space, and that was the turning chain. Single crochet into the next stitch, which is from round 7. Slip stitch into the next stitch, chain 1 and turn. Skip that slip stitch, single crochet in the next 10 stitches. Single crochet into that chain 1 space. Single crochet into the next 4 stitches, which are on row 7. Single crochet into the chain 1 space, and that completes all the short row. So what we have done is we've made a little heel for the spider's foot. So on the next round, you're going to start in that first stitch, and that first stitch becomes your new first stitch of the round. So just mark it with a stitch marker and single crochet in each stitch around. And you might want to check at this point, make sure you have 16 stitches. So I wanted to show you how to make the little eye glimmer right here, just because it's a little bit funky. So I have my eye, and I'm going to take my white cotton yarn, weight 1, or just some embroidery thread. I have here just regular embroidery thread. So what you're going to do is make a magic loop. If you don't know how to do that, I have it linked below. It's also linked in the pattern as well. Chain 1. And then work 6 single crochets into that magic loop. And you're going to pull to close. And that's actually all you're going to do. So you're going to just now slip stitch into that first single crochet that you made. And fasten off, leaving a bit of a tail for seaming. So before I seam this, I'm just going to weave in this end. It's kind of difficult, just pick a few stitches that you can weave it through to secure. Alright, to seam this white part onto the eye, start anywhere you want on the eye, it doesn't matter. I like to go about 2 rows in, just pick up a stitch or a leg of a stitch and just pull it through, just to hold it in place initially. And then what you're going to do is pick up the leg of a stitch next to where you started. It's a little bit difficult. And weave it through behind. So you don't want to go into those stitches, you want to go into the leg of a stitch, if that makes sense. So don't work into the stitches right here at the top that you see, work right behind them. And just work all the way around. And as you can see, it's a little bit fussy. Just kind of work as best as you can just to get it sewn in place like this. Then I'll just thread this yarn through to the back. And since we'll be seaming this eye onto the spider and you won't see the back, I like to just go through a stitch and tie a knot instead of worrying about weaving in this end because you won't see it. And that's how you make the eye. Alright, so I've completed my head and my abdomen of the spider, and I'm going to show you how to seam these two together just because it's a little confusing. So anytime I'm seaming the large pieces together, I'm using this yarn held double just as it was crocheted. So when you seam these together, you're not going to do a straight line. What you're going to do is seam them in kind of a circular pattern. So let me make sure you can see this because these are very large pieces. I like to start at the top, just go through a row and count kind of what number row that is. So for this, that's 3, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10. That's the 10th row. So I like to find out where the 10th row is on this one. 3, 6, 9, 10. And start at that 10th row on this one as well. And just get them kind of attached. What you're going to do then is work across the top and around like this in a circle. So keep working in that circular pattern and I'll meet you back. So it's just a little bit easier for me to show you this here. I have seamed across the top several stitches and I have gone down the side between these two. And now I'm going to seam through the stitching across and come back up the other side. Okay, so once I've worked all the way around and got back to where I started, I'm just going to tie a knot in these two ends and weave in my ends. So I have seamed the abdomen onto the head of my spider, and when I'm seaming characters, I like to kind of just put the eyes in place with some stitch markers so I can kind of see where everything needs to go relative. So I have one of the legs here, and you can see that the toe is meant to point up. And so when you point the toe up and you run all the way to the back of the leg, where you have fastened off with an invisible join is actually kind of where the top is going to close. So what you're going to do is match these stitches on the top. There's 16 stitches around. You're going to line them up 8 in a row. So you'll have 8 stitches in a row that you're seaming through, and you'll seam through both stitches. And I'm going to start on the bottom of the spider, right where that seam is, where the bottom of the head was seamed to the top. So I'm going to work into that same seam. So make sure your toe is pointing down at this point because we're working upside down. So I'm just going to pick up a stitch in that seam on the base of the head and then work through the 2 matched up stitches on the leg. So let me actually make sure that these are matched up. So those two, those two, those two. So it's going to be these 2 stitches right here. Just seam through. And the reason I think a lot of crocheters and knitters don't like seaming is because it's not really an exact science. It's kind of just, you know, what feels right. So just continue seaming that leg. Alright, and at this point you can fasten off and weave in the end, but I'm actually going to leave this end unwoven in until I've seamed on all the legs. That way, if I make a mistake or I don't like the placement, I can still go back and take the seam out and rearrange the legs. So for the next leg, I'm going to do the same thing. Make sure the toe is pointing down, match up the stitches along the edge, and I'm just going to seam it right next to that leg that we have just seamed. I'm going to work that way for all 4 legs on this side and do the exact same thing for all 4 legs on this side. So I'll meet you back when that's completed. Okay, so I have all the legs sewn onto my spider. I'm going to attach the eyes now. So use stitch markers to figure out where the placement of the eyes should be. What I did is I started at round 12, and that's where I attached the top of the eye. And then I used some additional stitch markers just to hold it in place, so I know that when I'm working around, I'm on track. So let me show you how to seam the eye. When you're seaming, don't work through the stitches on the edge. Work in the little leg right behind the stitch. I think that gives it a much cleaner look when you're seaming. So take a tapestry needle, and you're going to go in that leg right behind, if you can see that. And then you're just going to pull up a piece of a stitch in the same general area where you want that point to lay. Pull it through. And just repeat that around. And you want to definitely use these stitch markers to hold it down and make sure that you're on track and you're not ending up somewhere you don't want to be. So work behind, grab a stitch or a leg of a stitch, pull, and definitely take your time and just go slow doing this step. And work like that all the way around. And same for the other eye. Okay, to sew on these, I don't know how you pronounce it, chelicerae. I had to look up what they're actually called. But I'm starting at round 20. And I'm just going to pick up a stitch right there just to get it attached. And now I'm going to go from the top down into each stitch around the base. And just seam it right on in a circle. So just keep doing that. Go from the top down into the next stitch. And work like that all the way around. And then do the same thing for the one on the other side. Just make sure when you're doing this, whatever round you initially attach at for the top, attach at that same round for the opposite side so they're not wonky.